What's good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where this week I am absolutely loving life. Lexus has sent us back their ultimate flagship, the 2022 LS500. Except this one has a little bit of a twist to it, because this is the LS500 F Sport. And with any LS, F Sport or not, stuff like this doesn't come cheap. You know, the base price of an LS is about 80 grand, which is already a hefty dose of money. But with destination fees and options and everything, the price of this one is over $20,000 more, right under that $100,000 mark. So, yeah, it's a lot of car, it's a lot of money, but what I want to know is, does it still have the magic that I think of when I think of a flagship Lexus? Well, let's keep heading down the road. Let's find that out, shall we? You know, as a journalist, there's a lot of times where I sort of have preconceived notions about the vehicles that I'm going to drive. And even counting out the fact that I drove this same generation LS 2 years ago already, I already had an idea of what it was going to be like. Except I was proven wrong in this case, because I never imagined that I would be behind the wheel of Lexus's flagship luxury car with their high-performance F-Sport package attached to it. Now, I've seen the older LSs out on the road with the F-Sport package equipped, but they never really gave off the notion that they were anything, I guess, sporty. They just sort of more had a sportier appearance rather than actual performance to back up the claim. However, the F badge on this doesn't just stand for Fuji Speedway, which I'm assuming I'm right in saying that, but it stands for holy is this car fun. Oh. Wow. Oh. You know, it's so hard to conceive the fact that a 4,700-pound slab of Japanese luxury can still put your head back in the seat like that. Oh! This thing will do 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. It makes 416 horsepower, 442 foot-pounds of torque from just 3.5 liters and 2 turbochargers and 6 cylinders and dual injection. So basically, it's like a higher performance version of the motor that you'd find in a Toyota Tundra, except for one thing. This car may weigh as much as it does, but that engine feels nothing like the boat anchor that the Tundra has under its hood. But you know, considering this is the OG of the Lexus lineup, this is the car that started it all back in 1989, and it set the precedent for what a Japanese premium or executive luxury vehicle should feel like. It's exactly what you would think of in a big body car like this. I mean, I'm doing 50 miles an hour. I'm sitting in comfort mode after that crazy acceleration run, and it just softens right down. It lets the air suspension soak up the bumps. Even though this one's got the F Sport tuned version in it, it's not any firmer than the standard LS. It feels like I'm sitting on a memory foam pillow. It just barely soaks up the bumps. And you know what's even crazier is this thing is not meant to go to the track by any means, but for an extra, I think it's about $8,000, they will give you what they call the F Sport handling package. And while the steering itself is extremely light, I could almost just, you know, 2 fingers on each side of the wheel kind of thing, you get rear wheel steering like you get in an LC500. You get a variable gear ratio in the steering column itself. So it does have some response to it, but does that kind of stuff really belong in a big car like this? But you know, just like any car in the industry, this car has some pretty stiff competition to live up to. I mean, you've got Audi with the S8, you've got BMW with the M7 series, you've even got Mercedes with their reputable AMG cars. So the question becomes, for your $100,000 or over or under, whatever you want to spend, would you pick this or something more performance oriented? Like I said, not everybody wants pure luxury. They want a bit of potency out of their big body executive sedan. And you know what? I would still actually pick this car, despite the fact that I think Lexus could squeeze a little bit more out of this twin turbo 6. Make it, you know, just a bit fresher, and they would have something serious on their hands. But you know what? I don't want to go everywhere like my ass is on fire at 400 miles an hour. So I would say the LS is still a perfectly suited car for your 100 grand or whatever you want to spend. But you know what? It ain't just the performance that impresses, it's the looks. Now, design-wise, I never really thought there was anything wrong with the prior iteration of this new generation LS, but it just seems like Lexus keeps turning the knob up even higher as they go along. And combined with the more aggressive factor that this F Sport version offers, well, it seems like Lexus is aiming at a completely different crowd rather than just the run-of-the-mill executive sedan buyers. Now, speaking of aggressive, look at the color on this thing, this Matador red mica. Not exactly a flagship color, if I were to call it that. I see these things in a lot more neutral colors, you know, black, white, gray, or silver. However, with the F Sport version that we have here, I think it is sort of befitting a little bit, but it would take a lot in someone for me to actually go for a color like this versus what I was mentioning earlier. And while this thing is no Rolls-Royce Phantom, this is in fact the biggest Lexus ever in the family at this time. Right now, this car stands about 206.1 inches from nose to tail, which is huge. But when you stack it up against some of the other vehicles under the same brand, things get even more crazy. You want a Lexus RX 3-row? This thing is almost 10 inches longer than that. You want the flagship SUV, the LX600, brand new for 2022, and this thing is still 6 inches longer than that. So again, if you want to be the biggest and the baddest under the Lexus nameplate, this is the car you want. And speaking of big and bad, look down here. Look at these wheels, guys. 20-inch vapor chrome finished aluminum alloys. These are a no-cost option for the F Sport model. They're wrapped in 245/45 series Bridgestone tires. And even more impressive than just the wheels, which I absolutely love, by the way, contrasting beautifully with the red in this case. Look underneath there. Look at the size of the brake discs on this thing. They're about the same size in all 4 corners. So bearing in mind this thing weighs 4,700 pounds, it's definitely a guarantee that this thing will stop as well as it will go. But you know, just because you have the longest car in the Lexus name doesn't mean that's the biggest and best thing about it. Well, biggest is definitely the key word here, because again, it goes back to that options list. So many things on this car are an optional extra. It's ridiculous. I mean, look at the mirrors, for example. Two-tone, you got body color on the bottom, you got gloss black on the top, chrome, you got the LED turn signal in here. As you can see, they're also power folding. They come equipped with blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, but you want things like
a panoramic glass sunroof. That's an optional extra, which I do like. I like the nice contrast of the black glass with the red. I think it adds a little bit something extra as well. But one thing that is not extra is Lexus's advanced keyless access. I would expect no less on a car like this. And you know, the key fob is getting a little bit old. I kind of wish Lexus would do something a little bit newer for such an updated flagship car. But you know, you got lock, unlock, power trunk in this case, panic, and the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom. Now, normally the car will recognize the key, and when you walk up to it, you'll see things like the mirrors automatically fold out, and then you can just do the usual. You have the key in your pocket, you grab the handle, you hear it automatically unlocks, the mirrors fold out. But you know, if you're not interested in getting in, you can just push lock again, which is this little rib pattern right here on the front of the handle. Now, in Lexus's mild-mannered infinite wisdom, even though the front half of this car may have changed and definitely looks a lot more aggressive with the F-Sport kit, when you look at it from the back, it doesn't seem as crazy or out there. They didn't put a giant wing on the back of it like some of the super sedans that you see, say, from the Europeans, but things like the taillights, they did the sort of 3D approach like you see on the LC500. They're full LED everything. You've got the same LS badging. You've got two distinct cameras back here under the trunk lid, because one is the backup camera, of course, but the other one is a digital rear view mirror. Also an optional extra. Just amazing how many things are options on this car and not so much standard, again being near 100 grand as this one sits here. You look down below, you got the intuitive park assist across the back, as is replicated on the front as we saw, and they have some exhaust finishers right here, but unfortunately the pipe is a little bit further back in here. So unlike the raucous noise that comes from the European cars, this one is a little more subtle than that. And I mean, this is an almost $100,000 car after all. So, I mean, you want to open the trunk by using the key or whatnot? Well, I think not. We can walk up, just kick our foot underneath, have the key in your pocket, and up goes the power-assisted trunk lid. I've always loved things like that. You see a lot of it on SUVs, but not so much on cars like this. Now, underneath all of my crap that I have sitting here in the trunk, I recently had to clean out a bunch of stuff from my apartment. It is, not exactly the biggest space I would think of, but it is still on the larger side. In here, Lexus says it's about 17 cubic feet. I believe they say it's 16.95, but who wants to get that nerdy when talking about something like this? A couple of things you will notice: the rear of the cargo area has these indented portions back here, so that does take away from the cargo space. I believe behind here is sort of the automated systems for the adaptive suspension that we have on this, but you can also see things like the trunk hinges. They're encased in plastic and a bit of the carpet back here. But one other thing that I found rather interesting the last time I looked at this car is the fact that even though the trunk is powered, you can still lift and even close it like a normal trunk. If I want to just push it closed, I mean, I can do it just like that too. But, you know, there is the button under there if you just can't be bothered to close your own trunk as well. Now, it's no shocker that the outside of this thing has the look and prestige of a flagship Lexus, but when it comes to the inside, this is where I have quite a few questions. Now, I loved the interior of the prior LS that I drove back in 2020, but now here with this F-Sport model, I'm not exactly quite sure. I kind of like the two-tone black and white look they've got going on here. You've got a little bit of Alcantara here on the upper bolsters, a little bit more in the lower portions of the seat. You can see things like a seat extender on this one, which I really do appreciate because I'm more leg than torso. Heated and ventilated for both front occupants. I mean, those are all things I would expect from a near $100,000 car, but you know, you've got the F-Sport embossing up here on the headrest, and really just the idea of having Alcantara, leather, and the two-tone color combination, not quite suiting my taste, if I'm honest. Same thing with like the dash. The steering wheel, well, it feels like it came right out of an IS, not an LS. It does seem a little bit more on the basic side. I missed the stitched leather airbag that was on the last one that I reviewed. Same thing with the gauge cluster. This one just has the central tachometer with your relevant information either side, instead of the split gauge pods that it had in the previous iteration. So you would have like your got temperature gauge, fuel gauge, and then your tachometer and everything right in the middle. I just miss that. It just doesn't seem like it has the same air of quality in here, but I don't know, maybe that'll change. This being the F Sport as well, you have the giant silver paddle shifters on the back of the wheel, which is always nice, as I was mentioning before. Power tilting and telescoping steering column, that's always standard on one of these. And then you have a couple of little ubiquitous buttons, like the button to activate the panoramic view monitor even when you're stationary, and also another one for a giant heads-up display. And it seems the questions continue even further once you actually get behind the wheel of this thing. I mean, speaking with the F Sport specifically, staring at the steering wheel here in front of me and that thin film transistor gauge cluster and just everything from about here to here doesn't make me feel like I'm sitting in a $100,000 flagship luxury car. I feel like I'm sitting in something much less expensive, still the same great Lexus quality, but I miss the details that Lexus had with the prior LS that I drove compared to this one. Now, I'm not saying the quality and everything is bad. Everything feels great. The leather is soft and supple. All the buttons are exactly the same, from your dynamic radar cruise control, distance sensor, lane departure, different radio controls, hands-free Bluetooth, voice recognition, and of course the ubiquitous aero pad that allows you to control all the information in your tachometer. And then of course you have the one button that you push and the tachometer slides over, and now you have a much larger display with about the same relevant information as what you would get when the tachometer is front and center. However, to complain about things like the steering wheel and gauge cluster not really being, I guess, befitting of a near or right around $100,000 car, really my biggest gripe with this entire vehicle inside and out is right here. Lexus installed a 12.3-inch high-definition infotainment display, which I like. I've always enjoyed Lexus's systems, but it is let down by the fact that they are still using the old dynamic navigation system. This system right here does not belong in this car at all. I know Toyota recently introduced the new highlight system with vehicles like the new Toyota Tundra. I would have loved to have seen that system in here, but this, along with the aging Lexus remote touch interface, it's just technology that Lexus needs to take out of this car and put something brand new back in it. Now, I'm sure they're working on that, but I would rather use the other ancillaries, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, even Amazon Alexa. I would rather use any of those than use this system right here. Now, one thing I have been making some use of though is the 360 monitor, the panoramic view monitor as Lexus calls it. Now, when you put it in reverse, you get a normal backup camera with the 360 split screen off to the side. You can adjust the guidance lines to your liking and so on, and even make the camera even wider or more narrow focused, however you like it. But let's say you're just sitting still. You want to just see what's around you, right? You reach over just to the left-hand side of the wheel, push the button, and now you have a digital 360-degree view of your vehicle. Now, okay, it doesn't have all the details of the exact car I'm in, but it's in the same color, for crying out loud. And I can even reach up here, push one button, and you can have a much more in-depth look at what is around your car. So you don't just need to put it in reverse to activate the panoramic view monitor. So it's nice to know that Lexus gave you more than one way to see exactly what's sitting around your car. But going back to the thought of the level of detail in this car, look at this. You've got leather on the bottom, middle, top of the dash. You've got this metallic insert in the middle here, which almost reminds me of like guitar strings. It looks like you could just do that and it would play some sort of tune. But even just as the leather wraps around, it connects to the door. You have piano black for your memory seat controls, even on the driver's side here for the button that allows you to take over the controls on the passenger seat. You have this beautiful silver metallic detail here right near the door handle. Things like the Alcantara or suede here for the door panel, even down to the floating armrest here covered in this white leather. It just seems so insane that Lexus goes to the lengths that they do to make this car feel as prestigious as it does. And if perhaps that's not impressive enough, this car, for an extra $2 grand, gets you a 23-speaker Mark Levinson audio system. I have always had good luck with Mark Levinson, and to be fair, this one has the most speakers of any car I've ever been in, or at least the most unique placement of the speakers, because of course you have, ones in the door, you have some up on the dash, things like that, but when have you seen speakers in the ceiling? There's 4 of them, 1, 2, and then there's 2 of them right behind your head between the sections of the panoramic roof. Now, the sound quality in and of itself is exactly what you'd expect. So you push the volume button and it feels like you're in a concert hall. But alas, I guess Lexus must have realized that the people who can usually afford to get into a car like this are usually right at, if not over, retiring age. So what did they do? They put a CD player in it. In a six-figure luxury sedan, they put a CD player in here. Not only that, I did notice one other thing that was pretty amusing, I might say. Amongst all the buttons, the piano black, and my 2 bottles of prime refreshment here, which I have thoroughly been enjoying. Not a plug, just in case you guys were wondering why those are there. But amongst all of this, and even inside this dual-sided center storage here, there is not a wireless charger. There's none. I've looked. I mean, literally, you open this up, normally you'd think, okay, maybe it'd be right here. There's a couple of USBs right here. There's an auxiliary port, which is also very amusing, but no wireless charger anywhere. I find that really, really annoying that they'll do that in one of their other cars, but not in here. So that's a bit of a letdown. What's not so much of a letdown, and more so just of an oddity, is the shifter in here. It's almost like something out of a Mercedes AMG product or something. It's this little itty-bitty knob, and of course park is a button, but if you wanted to go into gear, just push over and up for reverse, pull over and hold it for neutral, over to the left and down for drive, and if you pull it straight back, that puts it into manual, and now you can have some fun with the paddle shifters. That being said, everything else around here looks pretty familiar, right? Except for these. These 4 buttons are definitely the most unique ones in here, probably except for that. That's your heated seats and heated steering wheel. You have the button right here for the power blind that goes across the rear window. You have the button to control all of the seating surfaces, including the adjustments for the bolsters, both top and bottom, things like heating, ventilating, your heated steering wheel, and so on. But my favorite one is this guy right here. That button is the one that allows the adaptive air suspension, or the variable air suspension, you might say, to be raised all the way up in the air. I mean, this thing's not a monster truck, but it's really interesting when you push it, you could feel the front of the car rising up, and then the back sort of follows suit a little bit afterwards. It's just, I guess it's just weird, but at the same time, it's kind of neat that you can raise it up, you know, to go over something like a speed bump. But you know, there are those people who don't simply wish to be driving their prestigious Lexus, they want to be driven around in it. So therefore you open these huge rear doors. And also, one thing that I forgot to mention is if you can't be bothered to slam the door, you just simply soft close it and it automatically pulls the door closed for you. But when you get in the back, at least in this one, there are a couple of things missing. The rear window shades that you can normally power up and raise up to the top, those are not here on this one. However, I do love things like the metallic detailing for the Mark Levinson reference audio. But you want some space in the back of this thing, right? And even though that driver's seat is right where I would have it, and I'm over 6 feet, when I'm sitting in the back, I have a boatload of legroom back here, and that seat is a good distance back. But I can lay back, just kick back and chillax. I kind of wish there was a second zone for the climate zone system back here, you know, to be able to allow rear occupants to do the same thing. But you have, you know, little beauty mirrors in here, which nobody wants to look at my ugly mug. But either way, you can also pull down the center console here. I can fold down the front seat, so if I want to push it forward and give myself a little more leg room as a rear occupant, I can certainly do that as well. I can even bring it back a little bit if I so desire. And there is also a separate button that allows you to control the power shade across the back. You open it up in the middle, and well, you got 2 USB chargers in there. I didn't think there was any in there in the first place, but all the same, I know that there are more expensive Lexus products out there. You know, you could get one with a screen that comes across the entire middle back here. So we're not looking at by far the most expensive LS, but if you're looking to ride around in style and comfort, you really can't beat being in the back of this. And as they say, all good things must come to an end. So unfortunately, this wraps up our review and drive of the 2022 Lexus LS500. As much grief as I gave this particular one for not being the most luxurious model and showing off the very best of what Lexus can offer, this is still an absolutely magical car to drive. I use magical somewhat loosely because obviously, again, it's not a Rolls-Royce, but for less than a third of the price of something that luxurious, this has a boatload of stuff to offer for the more prestigious person, shall we say. But anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this review, please give it a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below, because trust me, I always appreciate the support, and I hope to be bringing you plenty more vehicles like this and more to come in the future. As always, my thanks goes right back to Lexus USA for lending us another one of their cars to have fun with for a whole week. But at the end of it, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I'll see y'all next time. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.